One last area I'd like to ask you about, and that is the issue of the polls. Here's my take. On Tuesday afternoon, before the before any of the results, I looked at a map, and it indicated that basically Hillary Clinton was going to clean Trump's clock.
Florida, North Carolina.
And I, my feeling was, and I stated this on Facebook, my feeling was, wait a minute, I understand polls. I don't think the polls are rigged, okay, despite what Trump and his people were saying. I don't think so. I think that what you have is, and this is what I wrote, I think that what you have is a situation where you cannot measure potential energy.
Right.
It's just something that that you cannot measure.
No.
And
look, Stephen, let me go back to what I said originally. There is something called a margin of error, and it's 4.5, that's 9%. That's a big area in between there. And pollsters act like they are the gospel, and they are not, because that number is a snapshot of the day and the night they finished. And in that area is 4 points, 4.5 points, 3.5 points, but 3.5 points, 7%, either way. And too many pollsters run out there and start talking about their numbers as if there is no margin of error, and this is correct. And hangers on to campaigns or pollsters. One of the biggest things that's my complaint is polling is not trusted because of the people who profess to be pollsters or handlers who run around pushing their polls. And I read some of the stories last week, and this is my comments, and it ought to be looking at. I'm talking about other pollsters. Some of them ought to be ashamed of themselves to even call themselves a pollster. Number one, there is a margin of error, and there are standards by which, and I keep talking about where pollsters and journalists should honor and be aware of. The margin of error, the way the question was conducted, who paid for it, and all access to all the material, if the person so desires. And some of the media has always done that. But to run out and because it's paid for by a candidate, and then you push it to the media and act like it's gospel. It is not. And the media has become the worst offenders. They're the ones that are supposed to control the pollsters. Let me make that real clear. The reporters are supposed to control the pollsters by demanding access and an explanation and telling the public to be cautious about this, because there is a margin of error. This is not an exact dead-on science.
Sure. But the pollsters really weren't wrong, in my opinion. They weren't wrong.
Let me tell you. There are several indicators that bothered me.
It's all really turnout. That's what you can't measure.
That's what I tell people all the time. My polls are accurate because I have done this enough years in Louisiana where I'm calling people who are going to vote. I'm calling people who are not going to vote, and I'm missing them, and I'm missing that surge. Then my poll's going to be way off. And the national polls, they were acting like a three-point lead by Hillary Clinton is the gospel. It is not. And the other thing is that everyone's pointing out, and it was something that was happening, the polls they were bouncing around every 20 days. The bottom would fall out of Trump. He'd come back up. But guess what was happening with Hillary? She was at 45, and when he lost 10 points 3 weeks ago, she did not gain one more percentage. And that was a telltale sign of she is where she is. But you know what? The media and the pollsters were looking at their point of view and not the objective point of view, and warning and telling the public, look, let me be cautious on this. She is not a cinch. There are some things here. If you look at poll after poll after poll, which I do, I went back 3 polls and brought you to where John Kennedy finished, and why it seemed to be, it was fitting into exactly what I said. He was very popular because he was a treasurer. Then when the other guy started running, he wasn't on TV. I told everybody, well, now if he gets on TV and converts that treasury popularity, he's got to do, or he won't win. And he did it. There is none of that in Washington. It's political, and it's prejudice, and the media is, whether it's Trump polls, Trump pollsters, when Trump's winning, the polls are skewed against me. We had that. I was called a liar. I was sued by goofy candidates. Rob Maness called me a liar statewide. Where did he finish? Where was my poll on Rob Maness? Was I dead on or what? But I have to put up with that because the media has no filter. And I see it a lot here in Louisiana of, why are we publishing this junk? But I put up with it. But what it does is it destroys my part of the lives. We're part of that. And polls are important, not only for politics, but for other stuff as to where people are. Business needs to know, consumers, whether, you can't put out a product if you don't trust polls. How are you going to put out a product and see if it'll sell?
Sure, no.
But my point is that nationally, polls became part of the political process instead of part of the scientific process.
It's my opinion that, number one, you can measure, the type of intensity. It's just something that you can't do as relates to turnout. And the other thing I think that where the pollsters, I'm not going to say failed, but did not get it correct, is that they were measuring things in terms of Democrat and Republican, and they didn't really ascertain the Democrat crossover. The former, say, Reagan Democrats, the current now Trump Democrats.
And look, all polls become vulnerable to this, Steve. If a Democrat tells you I'm voting for Hillary, as they did in Michigan, and they don't vote, your poll is not correct. But exactly. But that's why we have a 3 or 4% margin of error. To say there's some issues in there that can change, that make this science, these statistics vulnerable to things we don't know. So that's why we say margin of error.
Sure.
When someone tells Bernie Pinsonat on a phone call, I'm going vote for, it's real simple. If you call 10 people and 5 of them say I'm voting for Trump and 5 say I'm voting for Hillary, but Hillary supporters are not quite as energized as you just pointed out, and that person doesn't vote, my poll has it dead even. But you take that one person away, then Trump is going to win and my poll is wrong.
Right, exactly.
So just that simple.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Turnout intensity of turnout really does make a difference. Listen, Bernie, got to run. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do. And
we had a great discussion.